The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with Access Credit Union and the Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary. The Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary has been established to honour the career and achievements of Access Credit Union's late CEO, Donal O'Driscoll. Throughout his long term as CEO, Donal championed the credit union ethos of supporting and empowering members, particularly in the sphere of education. In recognition of this, the Donal O'Driscoll Bursary will provide financial support to one individual embarking on third-level education or commencing an apprenticeship in 2022. The recipient of the bursary will be awarded €5,000 to help with costs. To apply for the bursary, visit www.accesscu.ie/bursary.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy and Matthew Hurley from the Star Sports Desk. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to give a gentle reminder, as always, to our listeners and viewers to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose the credit union, choose local, choose community. The final round of the group stages in the Cork Football Championships took place last week, and with so many West Cork teams in action, we have plenty to discuss on this week's podcast. In a few moments, we'll be getting Matthew's top 5 takeaways from the weekend that was, with several sides progressing to the knockout stages and several others facing down the barrel of some fairly daunting looking relegation battles. Later in the show, we'll be joined by Donal O'Sullivan to have a chat about the legendary Beara team that won the 1997 county final. Donal's also going to tell us about the Padraig Crowley fundraiser. Padraig, who was a goalie on that county final winning team, has been struggling with a serious illness for some time, and Beara GAA and his teammates from 97 have launched a fundraising drive to support the future educational needs of his 2 young children. We're also going to chat to Enniskeane Camogie captain Ashton O'Driscoll about their championship campaign. But lads, we're going to kick things off with the weekend football results and the final round of the group games in the Cork Football Championships. And Matthew, I'll get your 5 biggest takeaways in a moment. But Kieran, I'll come to you first. Big picture, it feels as though overall it was a pretty good weekend for the majority of the West Cork teams in action, save for the 1 or 2 that have unfortunately found themselves in relegation trouble.
Yeah, it was a weekend of highs and lows, Jack. I suppose starting with the lows first. We've Newcestown are in the Premier Senior Football relegation playoff against Éire Óg, and the Bandon footballers are also found themselves in the Senior A football relegation playoff. So that's kind of 2 huge games for those 2 clubs coming up. But besides that, it was a positive enough weekend for West Cork teams. So I know Matthew's going to run through his 5 takeaways teams in the Premier Senior Football quarterfinals, which is brilliant. We have Castlehaven, Carbery Rangers, and of course the Carbery divisional team is there. And there's the potential for a Carbery Rangers v Carbery county semi-final that will confuse a lot of people because they're both Carbery. And then also on top of that, Senior A football, we have a huge derby coming up in Bantry. Another battle of Bantry, we're going to bill it as, when Downies take on O'Donovan Ross. So that's a huge game for those 2 teams. Bantry Blues are straight through to a semi-final as well. But I think one of the big results of the weekend, and I know this is one of Matthew's takeaways as well, is Island Rovers. They avoided the Senior A football relegation playoff, and I think it's a huge result for the club because they've been slipping in recent times. Their senior football team hadn't won a group game in a long time, but they got the win they needed last weekend against Newmarket, and I think it's probably the result of the weekend for West Cork teams. And I know we're talking about teams through to quarterfinals and relegation playoffs, but for what it means for this Island Rovers team, stripped of nearly half of last year's team for different reasons. Fellas have immigrated, they're working, they can't commit, they have injuries. So for them to pull out a win when the need was most, it's just really good for the team. And it gives them something to I suppose, to base on for next year. And for friend of the show, Diarmuid Duggan, we've had on the podcast an awful lot. He's joint manager of Island Rovers. So for Diarmuid and Jason Whaley and all the Island lads, I think it was such an important result for Island Rovers because it stops the rot. It stops the rot. If they ever stuck in another relegation fight this year, who knows where their slide would have ended. But at least they've got that win now. They've got that result. Their season is over, but they're safe. They're safe, which is a big, big positive for Ireland after another tricky championship year.
Okay then, Matthew, let's get your top 5 biggest takeaways from the weekend. Obviously, Kieran mentioned Ireland are in there. Are they at number 5? Are they at number 1? Let's start at 5.
5 and 4 are probably intertwined because they're in the same group. Down the Intermediate A Championship, it was a brilliant victory for Adrigole, getting over Ballydesmond, and in the second round more so getting over Kilshannig as well. And for Adrigole, a small, tiny little club in Beara, to get through to the quarterfinals of that competition is absolutely brilliant. But on the other side of the story then, Gabriel's only lost by last minute point against Kilshannig. That sent them out. Like, if they drew the game, they would have topped the group. Now they're out of the championship. 4 points out of a possible 6, and they're out. When I was talking to Kieran about this in the office a few days ago as well, when you consider Clyne in the hurling last week got 2 points, not agreed, Cedar Ray got 2 points, and they progressed. And then you look at poor Gabriel Rangers, 4 points, and yet it isn't enough. And it's really upsetting for a club like Gabriel Rangers because it would have been a real achievement to reach a quarterfinal for their club. And well done to Adrigole, brilliant achievement for them to reach the quarterfinals.
Kieran, do you want to briefly come in on the Gabriel's loss there? Because as Manchu mentioned, heartbreaking stuff.
100%, so heartbreaking because with a minute to go, they were in the knockout stages, and then, like you said, Kilshannig got that late point to win the game, and it knocked Gabriel's out, and it just shows the fine margins and the tight margins in these Cork championships now. And it's also, I know the Gabriel's fans and supporters won't look at it this way this week, but it also shows the beauty of these county championships where there's something on the line in all these group games. And while Gabriel's topped the group at the start of play, they finished in third in the table on scoring difference. But also what Matthew said there, it's brilliant to see Adrigole get through to the county quarterfinal. They'll be playing Boherbue on Sunday, September 18th in Macroom, and that's a huge game for the Beara club to be in the knockout stages. Maybe it's bonus territory for them. But the thing is, they're now there. They're there with a chance. So while Gabriel's missed out, there's a great story here with Adrigole in a county quarterfinal. So they're in, like I said, they're in bonus territory. They have nothing to lose now. So let's see how Adrigole get on.
Okay, that's 4 and 5. Matthew, number 3.
And number 3 is a bit of a downer. And the Cedar A Championship, we mentioned Island Rovers. We'll get on to them in a minute. But Bandon, unfortunately, are stuck in that Senior A relegation battle. And on 0 points out of a possible 6 out of 3 games. That's really bad for Bandon. And they've only scored 2 goals. And you could say they deserve to be in this position. They lost to Ballingeary at the weekend, also losing to Downies and to Kishgame in the first game as well. And now they're in a relegation battle. And yeah, it's kind of difficult for Bandon because over the last few years, there was, I think 5 years ago, they actually won an Intermediate Championship. And then they haven't really settled in senior that well. So, to go down to a relegation playoff now. But as we've seen in relegation playoffs in the previous few years, usually the team at 0 points comes up with a performance on the day and gets a result. Like Newmarket are on 1 point, they'll be crestfallen after their results at the weekend. So maybe there's an opportunity there for Bandon to produce one of their biggest performances of the year and possibly get out of the relegation battle. It's a big game for Bandon.
I want to add in something here, if you don't mind. Like we said there, Bandon are obviously they're through to the Senior A football relegation battle, and they're taking on Newmarket on September 17th. Newcestown, like we mentioned, are in the Premier Senior football relegation battle, and they'll take on Éire Óg in Brinny also on Saturday, September 17th. And it's no surprise, lads, that they're 2 dual clubs, Newcestown and Bandon, that have found themselves in this situation. Like for the dual clubs, I suppose they're finding this new championship tough going, to be quite honest, because they're on the go weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend. And let's say the Bandon Hurlers for a second, they have a huge county hurling quarterfinal this weekend against Ballinhassig. So it's just they're going from one court to the other, and it's just quite difficult. So maybe there's something in that the dual clubs are starting to find it going, especially when dual clubs are, let's say, they're successful or not successful. They've all these extra games, so it's hard to juggle both. So I don't think it's a coincidence that you've both Bandon and Newcestown, two really strong dual clubs in West Cork, finding themselves in relegation trouble.
And Kieran, just judging by your own Twitter feed there over the last 24 hours, there are similar problems affecting some of the dual clubs in the Carbery Championship as well, in particular Agardeen Rangers. I see lots of complaints from members of that particular club over the scheduling of their two games coming up. So just while we're on this topic, maybe talk to us briefly about that as well.
Yeah, so with Agardeen Rangers, they're a successful dual club in West Cork at the moment. So they're through to the quarterfinals of the Premier Junior Hurling Championship this weekend. They're taking on Russell Rovers, but their junior footballers are also through to the Carbery Junior A semi-final. So Agardeen Rangers, they beat Randallogue last Sunday after extra time. That put them through to the semi-final. But because there is a county board deadline for the Divisional Junior Football Championships, these divisional championships have to be run off quite fast. So Agardeen will have their county hurling quarterfinal this Saturday. Then next Tuesday night, they're going to take on Tig McCorrig in the Carbery Junior A football semi-final. So that's only 3 or 4 days later. The club, and Matthew might come in on this in a second, because we had Bill Fleming on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. There is a strong nucleus of lads in Agardeen who play both hurling and football. So it's really tough going on a club like Agardeen. It's almost like they're being punished for being successful. But there's so many different strands of play here. And we touched it last week with the Carbery Junior A Football Championship postponed for that weekend because of Barry Rowe's appeal against their elimination. Carbery lost out on one full weekend of games. So that squeezed the remaining knockout games into a tighter schedule. On the other side, then we have the county board deadline, because the Carbery junior football representatives are meant to play the Muskerry winners on the weekend. I think it's September 23rd, 24th, 25th. So Carbery are working up against that deadline. I do know Carbery did apply to the county board to get an extension to the Carbery Junior A Football Championship, but they learned on Monday that they weren't successful in that. Since then, I've just seen as well on Tuesday that the fixtures for the Munster Club series were released by the Munster Council, and the Cork representatives in the junior football have a bye in the quarterfinal, so they're not out now until the very end of November. So maybe, just maybe, there's a bit of wiggle room here, and there's more in this story to come if the county board can push back the deadline, because obviously Agardeen, tough on those players. But there's another part to the story, Jack, as well. The Carbery senior football team is playing their quarterfinal against Ballincollig on Sunday the 18th, I think it is. And then we have a Carbery Junior A final on 2 days later on Tuesday the 20th. We don't know who's going to win in the Carbery final yet, right? I'm going to take a wild guess here, and I could be wrong. Let's say it's Tig McCorrig against St. Mary's. Mary's have 5 lads on the Carbery panel. Cara have a good few lads as well. Colm O'Driscoll, Kevin O'Driscoll, Brian O'Driscoll, and so on. Are those lads expected to play a huge game for the Carbery footballers? And that's Sunday night. I think it's a 5 or 7 o'clock throw in a Parky Queeve. Then 2 days later, play a Carbery junior football final if their clubs do get there. Like, that's asking an awful lot of players, especially when you consider that this year that there's such a prize with the Carbery Junior Football Championship. If you win your division in football in Cork this year, one of the 8 divisions, you win promotion to the new Premier Junior Football grade in 2023. So the Carbery Junior A football final is effectively a county final or a promotion playoff, because you're winning a promotion to a new county grade. So there's an awful lot on the line, and it's just unfortunate that the players are the ones losing out here, because they've been asked to do an awful lot in a short space of time.
Well, just on the point about the players then, Matthew, because obviously Kieran mentioned you spoke to Bill Fleming of Agardeen a few weeks ago on the podcast. You're also involved in a dual club yourself in Ballinascarty. So what are players feeling at the minute? What are you hearing out there on the training pitches, or just amongst friends and family who are involved? The pressure that's being put on, especially in dual clubs, for example.
Well, I suppose, first of all, my club, Ballinascarty, we're in both junior competitions, so we aren't as intense as the likes of Agardeen. I'm speaking to Paul Holland in this week's Star as well, and he was saying 25 Arcadine lads only signed up, between hurling and football. And for that kind of a club, it's not really feasible really going to that kind of a stage. And you look, they're playing Russell Rovers on the Saturday. Then on the Tuesday, they're playing a Carbery semi-final. Like that is, it's crazy stuff from the Cork County Board really and the Carbery County Board, And judging by the Munster draw as well, Paulie Palmer actually mentioned this in a tweet I was looking as well. Maybe there is wiggle room there, as Ciaran rightly said, to push it back a small bit. I think there definitely is. And, Argadine, Barry Road, there's more pressure on those, probably Kid Britain as well. Maybe not so much pressure on Bal because they're in junior and both, not in the county championships. But for those clubs, especially Argadine, they are, and I definitely agree with Ciaran here, they're definitely punished for doing well. And, that shouldn't be happening in the Cork County Board, definitely not. We just want our Carbery teams to do well in competitions. And if the core structures are going to stay, they aren't going to do well. Simple as that, no matter how well they're playing in these various competitions.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely impossible. But let's move on then, Matthew, to your final two biggest takeaways from last weekend's action.
And number two is the one we mentioned earlier in Island Rovers staying up. Like, it's an unbelievable achievement for Dermot Duggan and the team there. Like, unbelievable to stay up. And considering they didn't win a group game in 2020 or 2021, and they won it now when the nail was put to their collar. And what a win for them. Like, Dan McKeown stood up when counted. There was a lot of players that stood up in that game. Newmarket, it was a tough game for them, and they finally got over the line. And yeah, Newmarket, they were actually going for a quarter final themselves, but they ended up missing out on it because of this result. And it was an unbelievable achievement for Ireland to win this game, and it was badly needed as well. Like, they haven't won a county championship game since 2019. That's a very, very long time for them. And finally, they won a game. And I suppose then at number one, it's the Premier Senior derby between Castlehaven and Newstown. Like, people were thinking Newstown would put up a challenge. In fairness, I think they had a goal chance in the first minute, just slightly wide. But Castlehaven took complete control then. Brian Hurley, Michael Hurley, Rory Maguire all stood up when counted, and they got over the line in the end. I was speaking to James McCarthy last week. He was saying this was all about the result. This was all about getting over the line. They got over the line now, but he was saying, actually, I was reading somewhere, was it the Echo or somewhere, that he wasn't really happy with the performance of the day against Newstown. So he thinks they should improve against Mallow. So, that kind of shows the levels that Castlehaven are at, and probably they're the team to look at in West Cork to go on and win the county championship, because they have some very nice players there. If they win against Mallow, they'll play the Bars in the semi-final. Obviously, a repeat to the semi-finals over the last semi-finals there with the penalty shootouts. So Castlehaven, after losing that penalty shootout last year, will be determined to right those wrongs. Newstown, in a relegation battle, it's going to be tough for them now. Well, they're out of the hurling. That's maybe a positive and maybe blessing in disguise for them, so they can concentrate in this game against Éire Óg, who haven't got a point themselves. So maybe Newstown will go into this game all guns blazing. The injuries, though, for Newstown are colossal, and that'll be a big thing for Tim Buckley to fix over the next few weeks, and that could be their Achilles heel as well. Injuries is going to be a big part to play in this relegation playoff.
Okay, lads, well then, just to wrap up our weekend football review, I want you to both give me a prediction for the various championships across the grade. Which West Cork teams after the group stages are ye thinking are most likely to maybe reach a county final or even win one? Matthew, you've said Castlehaven are probably the likeliest in the Premier Senior grade, so maybe give us one of the ones in the other grades, and Ciaran, yourself too. Someone in Premier Senior and someone in any other grade, Senior A, Intermediate, etc., that you think could potentially give us a West Cork County champion this year.
I'll let Matthew put his head on the chopping block first. Off you go, Matthew.
Jeez, Ciaran. Yeah, you're putting me under fierce pressure now. Yeah, Senior A, it's going to be a tough one. No, Donovan Ross or Donny's. I think Donovan Ross will perform better in this championship, but Donny's have the players to catch fire. The likes of Mark Buckley, the likes of Fionn Hurley. So this will disappoint a lot of skid people, but I'm going to go Donny's to actually beat Donovan Ross in the quarterfinals. So yeah, they're unbeaten, Donny's. People seem to forget that. Like, they've drawn 2 games, they've won 1. So maybe that that form will drag into the quarterfinals.
You're a very brave man, Matthew, because the next time you're going downtown and skip to get your lunch, I guarantee you'll have a couple of fellas chucking sandwiches and so on at you after going against the hometown of Skip. But best of luck with that one.
Geez, I'm being forewarned now. I suppose the Premier Intermediate I think Bantry probably in this championship, like Cantorp on fire, it'll be a very big will be the best bet will be the ones to look at to try and win that, because I think they're the only ones left in it. So, the Adrigole, Bantry Blues and Dawnies, the pressure's on you, lads.
Okay, well, I just love that. I love how Matthew has tipped Castlehaven to possibly go all the way in the Premier Senior, or at least make a semi-final, maybe a final, and he's gone against Skibbereen as well. So yeah, just some really poor choices there for a man who's in the office in Skibbereen as we speak. So yeah, look, I'm nervous for you now, Matthew. I'm really nervous for you, Kieran. I want you to give us some names of clubs as well that you think can maybe make an impression on the latter stages of the championship across the variety of grades.
Okay, we look at the Premier Senior first. So Castlehaven and Mallow quarter-final. I'd expect Castlehaven to get through that. Then it's Castlehaven against the Bars. And that's a tough one. Like Matthew said, they've met the last couple of years in the semi-final. It's one apiece. And that's all on the day. It really is. That could go either way. And what could actually stand to Castlehaven here is that they'll be after that extra game against Mallow once they stay injury-free. So you could be looking at Castlehaven getting through to the county final on one side. Looking at the other side, you've Nemo and Carbery Rangers, and you've Ballincollig and Carbery. So there is the possibility of an all West Cork semi-final here. I think, to be honest, Carbery Rangers could find it going a bit tough against Nemo. Nemo are far more seasoned, far more well-established than young Carbery Rangers right now. But this is a Ross team, I suppose, in a development phase, and they're moving forward. So again, it's a good game for Carbery Rangers right now, but I'd expect Nemo to get through there. And I'd actually fancy Carbery to get past Ballincollig, touch wood. So we'd have a Carbery-Nemo game. And who knows, it's a semi-final, anything can happen. Wouldn't it be great to have an all West Cork county final? So who knows? Yeah, I'm gonna say actually Carbery and Castlehaven. I know this might come back and bite me in the arse, but I'm gonna put my colours to the West Cork mast here and hope and pray for a Carbery final. Wouldn't that be a football championship for a second? And Bantry Blues will be playing the winners of Ivlera and Rockchapel. Bantry have won their 3 games from 3, so hopefully they'll get a county final. So I'm going to pin my colours to the blue mast there with Bantry Blues, and back up to Senior A. I'm going to balance it out. Since Matthew went for Dawnies, I'm going to go for Skib. Not just being political here, because the Star office is in Skibbereen, and I get my scones and my sandwiches in Skibbereen restaurants and shops, and I value my safety as well. So I'm gonna go for Skib here to get the better of Dawnies, but it'll be a cracker in Bantry. But the big thing after that, they're playing St. Michael's in a semi-final, so that's going to be a huge game. St. Michael's are a really good team at Senior A, so you could take nothing for granted. But yeah, I'll tip Skip here to get past Dawnies, just to balance up after Matthew's bold prediction of going for the Dunmanway. I mean.
Okay, great stuff, lads. We're going to park the club action there for a moment and take a quick break. Coming up next, we're speaking to Donal O'Sullivan about the 97 Beara County Championship winning side.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with Access Credit Union and the Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary. The Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary has been established to honour the career and achievements of Access Credit Union's late CEO, Donal O'Driscoll. Throughout his long term as CEO, Donal championed the credit union ethos of supporting and empowering members, particularly in the sphere of education. In recognition of this, the Donal O'Driscoll Bursary will provide financial support to one individual embarking on third-level education or commencing an apprenticeship in 2022. The recipient of the bursary will be awarded €5,000 to help with costs. To apply for the bursary, visit www.accesscu.ie/bursary.
Welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. And Kieran, in a moment, we're going to hear from Donal O'Sullivan to chat about the legendary Beara team that won the 1997 County Championship. Donal's also going to tell us, Kieran, about the Padraig Crowley fundraiser, but maybe you can also enlighten us a little bit. What is the Padraig Crowley fundraiser?
This is a fundraiser that Beara GAA have launched to support us with one of their own. Padraig Crowley was the goalkeeper when Beara won the Cork senior football title back in 1997. That's the last time Beara were crowned county champions. In recent years, Padraig has been receiving medical treatment, and what the Beara GAA and his former teammates, they've come together here, and we're going to hear more from Donal O'Sullivan quite shortly, explaining why they've done this. But they've come together to launch a fundraising drive to support the educational needs of Padraig's two kids, James, who's 8, and Molly's, who's 4 years old. So there's a raffle on the October bank holiday weekend, and there's a lot of prizes available here. Tickets cost just €10, and all you have to do is go online to www.bearagaa.ie, buy a ticket for a really, really good cause, and you might win a prize in this. Those tickets are also on sale for members of the Beara 1997 team and management. And as well as that, a golf classic will be held in Bear Haven Golf Club on September 15th to 17th. Teams of 3 cost just €60, and they can be booked by contacting Joss Crowley on 086 8644 111. That's 086 8644 and 111. And tee boxes and green sponsorships only cost €50, and they can be arranged by contacting Barry Murphy on 087 234 2703. So like I said at the start, this is for a really good cause. It's really well worth supporting. I just want to wish the Beara board, the Beara 1997 team, and everyone involved in this fundraiser the very, very best to look over the next couple of weeks and months. So I caught up with Donal O'Sullivan to chat about the fundraiser. But first, we spoke and we reminisced about the Beara team that won the 1997 Cork senior football title. They beat Castlehaven after a replay. That was the division's first senior football title since 1967. And it was a really special time for football in Beara. The under-21 team was going so well at the time. That Beara senior team had been building over a couple of years. Semi-finalists in 96, quarter-finalists in 95. But 97 was the year they got to the final and they got over the line. So as you'll hear from Donal O'Sullivan now, it was a really special year for the Beara men. It's 25 years since Beara climbed to the top of the Cork Senior Football Championship ladder, ending the division's 30-year wait for glory. We're joined now by the manager of that great team, Donal O'Sullivan, to have a look back at a magical year for the division. So, Donal, when people mention that 1997 Beara football team to you, what's the image or memory that springs to mind first?
I suppose it was 97. Like we actually won the county championship. It was a few years in the making, as the man says. Like it was, previous to that there was a manager before me who passed away, sadly recently, like DJ O'Shea, and in 94, 95, like he was involved and he started reorganizing. Divisional sides, Kieran, is very difficult to sort of get things together rapidly. Like even though we always had sort of clubs in Beara had great loyalty towards the Beara division and had a history of always supporting it. I suppose like everything else, it wanes and it comes in peaks and valleys and stuff like that. But in 96, then I think was the start of our campaign. I had Johnny Hoolan with me from Orne and Barry Murphy, who was originally from Beara Island, but was involved with Bishopstown. He's actually with Ballincollig, so he's been around the block a bit. But so we got together early in the year and decided that I suppose for us, like, training was not really a huge option to begin with. So we actually got permission from the county board to join the Killer Shield in 96, which was a huge plus for us. No, put an enormous task on us because, like, you had teams like Castlehaven who were quite successful at that period as well, and Adrigol, and the clubs in Beara, like junior clubs like Garnish, Orne, Beara Island, and Glengarriff, as well. So you can imagine, like, getting a team out in the Keller Shield and still fulfilling the intermediate fixtures that Adrigol and Castlehaven were involved with, which meant we were playing 2 games a week effectively. But it was a huge plus for us. But I think all the players bought into it, and we had some fantastic leaders on that team in the leadership group, like, who were very well known players at the time, and quite aware that it's very difficult to start mentioning names and this thing, Kieran. But like Donal O'Sullivan was in his peak at Cork at the time, and he was a fantastic leader. Then you had Oliver O'Sullivan and Regan, Michael Harrington. They all had experience playing with Paul Hanley. They all had experience playing with Cork, you know, at underage level. The Wisemans, Harrington, Seamus Spencer. So we had a group of players that were quite capable, like if they were sort of reorganised and of competing at that level. And we sort of knew that, I suppose. And the only way we felt was to get games into the bodies, like.
You mentioned there about so many strong characters in that team, and we'll come on to the likes of Kieran O'Sullivan and so on, Donal. But like you said as well, this wasn't an overnight success story. Like this was this 97 campaign, it was building for a couple of years. And we have to talk about the under-21 success of Beara around the time. I think there was 3 county under-21 titles in just 5 years. And in fact, the week after Beara beat Castlehaven in that 97 final replay, Beara won the under-21s as well. And 7 players who played in the senior decider against Haven played in that game as well. We had Timmy O'Shea, Padraig O'Sullivan, Donal Wiseman, Sean Walsh, Sean Dean, Brendan Jor, and Alan O'Regan. There was a real crop of talented young footballers in Beara at the time, Donal.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. I mean, there was they had the management team of the under-21s, Oliver O'Sullivan and Michael Harrington and John Jones. Those were putting together that team. But I suppose it all started originally, like, but to be fair, if you go back in time, like, you know, with Beara Born and Og really sort of got going with Connie Murphy and John L. O'Sullivan. I suppose it was maybe the 80s, 90s, like, you know, and they put a structure in place where, you know, Beara became competitive at underage, and it gave an outlet for a lot of these players to showcase their talents. Because, as you know, with rural clubs and the rural depopulation, Kieran, like that, you always get, you know, the opportunity to play at a county level, like, or, you know, have a shot at winning a county title if you're from, you know, a small rural junior club. And so I suppose Beara afforded them that sort of, you know, competitive instinct to get out there and try and showcase their talents. And that was a unique period for the Beara team, or the Beara underage, like, to come through, like, and, you know, they contested a lot of under 14 and minor finals with a lot of people. And I suppose you're dead right there when you say that, you know, the fulcrum of the team, as you just mentioned, there were underage, you know, they were all young. They were young players. They were 20. I think that you know, in our county final winning team, we had Rory O'Dwyer, who was probably the oldest member of the team, who had been playing with the Bars for many years, and he actually transferred back to Beara for that county final period. And it's ironic because we had a guy called Michael Buckley, who had played with the Bars for many years and had played with Beara for many years, and who was based in Adgerall and had transferred back to the Bars. And Rory came the other way and just ended up just, you know, being in the right place at the right time. But again, you're right in the sense that the under-21 side provided a huge basis. But I felt that, you know, having those players involved, I think it was Bishopstown they beat that year, if my memory is right, in that final, just a week or two later in the Premier League, I think it was. I think that you know, the likes of Brendan George you mentioned, and Alan O'Regan and those guys had all played at minor level, and you know, the 2 Wisemans are Donal and Inda, like, Inda wasn't involved with us that year, but Donal was, and Sean Welsh, they all had played like at that level, like Seamus Spencer, Michael Harrington had been on the Cork panel, like, you know, in and around it. Ollie O'Sullivan, these guys like had a wealth of experience at underage level, and you're dead right, like, you know, 21 really brought it to the fore at that stage. But again, I think the Keller Shield gave us the experience of playing at the next step up to those younger players. And, you know, you were competing against teams like Nemo Rangers, with the likes of Castlehaven, you know, Bishopstown, Clyde, are all good teams at the time. And I remember we did quite well in the league, in the Keller Shield, actually. And at the end of the year, we were sort of disappointed, I'll always remember, because we had 12 points. But a lot of the teams that time wouldn't travel down to Beara to play our home games. And that was sort of a bone of contention for us. And ended up in, I think, Bishopstown and Castlehaven played the final actually afterwards on the same amount of points we were ourselves. Like, so, but I think, you know, it all came together. Like, you know, we worked really hard, don't get me wrong. We played a lot of challenge games in Kerry. You know, we played in Crystal Stadium, we played in Kilgarvan, we played West Kerry, South Kerry, all these type of teams, Crokes. And so we punched a lot of time into the panel of players. And believe it or not, we had about 30 involved, even though at one stage I can tell you, Ashton O'Driscoll played Ahada yesterday, and obviously we were pipped by a point. But from that point of view, we played Ahada in the Keller Shield down in Dunmanway. 3 selectors playing the same day to make up our 15 because one of our cars broke down. The garnish cars, as we refer to it. We suppose we built a lot of camaraderie, and it's sort of we found out a lot about the players as well on the panel, and they got the experience of playing at that level then, like, so they weren't, when it came down to being competitive then, I suppose they didn't fear any side. In '96 we sort of we had beaten Bantry, who were county champions. I think Skib won in '93, and Castlehaven won in '94, Bantry won in '95, Clan won in '96. So we were trying to keep the roll going, if you know what I mean. But in relation to the '96 campaign, we had Bantry, a very good Bantry side in the quarter-final in Cahill. And they were, the good side that time. Damien O'Neill and Mark O'Connor and those guys, Shani McCarthy, they were a lot of very good players. Like, so we knew they weren't far away. Then we played UCC, or should I say Kieran UCK, in Bantry in a semi-final. We got beaten by a point. And like they had the stars on the side, like they had, even though Clan actually beat them after us in the final. I think it was Terry Dillon got a punch goal near the end. But they had the two, and the current player manager and his brother, the two Lohans were playing. They had Seamus Moynihan. They had a guy, I think, from Tipperary midfield, and they had Johnny Crowley and Miano Cronin. So they had a very good side. And, it took a great, I was really impressed with the way Clan beat them in the final, and I felt then that we weren't far away.
You told me before, Donal, that game stuck in your memory because you could hear UCC singing, or the boys from UCC in the dressing room after the game, and like it was a 1-point loss in Bantry, a narrow defeat, and you knew Beara were close, and that game stuck in your memory, did it?
It absolutely, I never forgot it, because I was good friends with a guy afterwards who was involved in the fishing business in Castlehaven, called Jason Whelly, who tortured us that day, actually, playing corner forward as well. And I said to myself, like, if we ever needed motivation, in relation to, pursuing the goal of trying to win a county, I said to the guys that day, I said, just listen, let's sit and listen to this. And, we're the boys from UCC, we're doing song next door and blah, blah, blah. And I could look to them, like, but we felt, that if we wanted to advance to the next stage, we had to raise our fitness levels, number one, and also our game plans, number two, and we had to get our team settled. And I'm a great believer that if you get games into people in certain positions, they'll either do two things: they'll fail from it or they'll learn from it. Mm-hmm. And thanks be to God, most of all our guys learn from their mistakes. They learned how to play properly and so forth. I'm not saying they couldn't play, but they adapted to the situations. And as I said, we had very good impetus, going into the following year. But I do remember in the Bantry game, long before Mickey Hart and Donal O'Sullivan had a tie strain, and Johnny Houlihan and Barry, so we suggested that we take him off in the first half and bring him on in the second half, which we did. And I was amused afterwards when Mickey Hart did the same to Peter Canavan in the All-Ireland final, where we're a small bit ahead of it, and we're thinking maybe ourselves at the time. But it did work because he got kicked some crucial frees, and he was a superb free taker, as proved in the county final afterwards. He was an outstanding, an outstanding player for us, because even though he was playing with Cork and playing a lot of league games, he was first man in the training session, first man into, first man tugged out, first man to lead by example. And I saw him give an exhibition one night against Clyde up and Clondrohid. He scored 8 points from midfield from play. So, that sort of thing inspires other players around. Brendan Jor was a very young player, very good. Alan Regan, Paul Hanley, as I said to you, like Ollie O'Sullivan, a player who was underutilized, in my view, by Cork for periods afterwards, because then, they found a role for Paul Gallivan for Kerry, in much the same sort of a situation, winning a lot of dirty ball and transferring the game changed a lot, But of course, it's the players themselves. Well, we put the stuff in place for them to play. It all came down to their own attitude. And I'm a great believer that players, at the end of the day, if they have the right attitude, win matches. You know, you can have all the tactics you like and everything else, but you must. I saw a thing there recently about Paul O'Connell. You must, play what's in front of your face, and I think our fellas did during that period of time. And even though we scraped over Clyde in the first round, in the second, in the quarter final, we played in the Bursary in Dunmanway, and the person who we were raising funds for now, Padraig Crowley, will come to in a minute. But he was playing goals that day. He actually saved 2 penalties in the second half. We were very comfortable in the first half. I think we might have been, with the memory, I might be exaggerating a bit here. I think we were 7 or 8 points up at half time. So our dressing room was sort of calm, and we were just saying, look, if we can keep this up, and every time they score, we score, we're going to come out of this and get into the semi-final. And all hell sort of broke loose in the second half for a while, because our captain, Donal O'Sullivan, got a bit over-exuberant in the start of the second half, and he'll say to you this was a misdemeanor that he shouldn't have been punished for, but he was anyway. So it reduced us to 14 men and put us under a bit of pressure. And Bursary got a good enough team that time. When I say good enough team, I'm not belittling by any means now or anything, but they had the O'Halpines, and they had a lot of very good players, and quite capable of scoring. And we were lucky to get out of there in the end by, I think, a couple of points or something. But I do remember Padraig Crowley saving 2 penalties in the second half, which kept us in the game basically, because they made a huge surge back into the game.
Huge moments in that game, and that put you through into the county semi-final. You mentioned Ollie Roux getting sent off against the Bursary, but by some sort of miracle, he still played in the semi-final, because that game was put back from the 23rd, Saturday to Sunday, I think it was, and that Ollie's suspension had expired, so he was able to line out. So he was telling me before that he had a good defence team that got him back on the pitch for that semi-final, Donal.
I'll tell you, our 2 delegates from the county board, I think that's way Kieran, that maybe serves me right. I think there was the game was fixed for the Sunday, and the game was put back to Saturday night. So it would have meant that he was eligible to play on the Sunday, but not eligible to play on the Saturday night. I think that's my understanding of it. But my memory fades with time, as you know yourself. But Gerbat, the late Gerbat, was our delegate in the county board. Mick Reynolds, the man from Mitchelstown originally, but who served with Beara and Garnish and has been our delegate for, I'm sure everyone in the county board. So they canvassed the delegates, and it was taken to a vote, and they got huge support for it, which sort of surprised a lot of people. But I suppose they could see that it was sort of a bit of an unfair advantage in one sense and an advantage in another sense, that, he was eligible to play on the Sunday, so he was back on the Saturday night. So we played Duhallow then, managed by John Fenton Daly and Macroom. And it was 16-8 it ended up with, but we had a number of things that helped, that sort of came together for us in the night. A player there that I didn't mention either was Neil Murphy. He won an under-21 medal with Cork in Limerick v Galway, and he was our centre back, a very good player. His brother Noel was also on the panel, and was in the forward line. But he went centre forward that night, and Paul Handy came back into midfield with he was centre back, and Duhallow had a very good side at the time. They had Danny Cullity, Mark O'Sullivan Mark was playing very well for Cork at full forward, and we put Donal Wiseman went back full back on Mark O'Sullivan to mark him specifically, and our move from Neil Murphy went to centre forward. Do you believe it or not, Kieran, and scored 1-2. Which, sometimes this can happen. And he was marking. I'll always, because I ended up being a select with Jerome Walsh after. So again, a few digs about that, because he was centre back for Father Val, the Welsh is now playing with Kenturk. But things worked over. They had Niall O'Connor. They had a very good side as well. And the year before, they had actually beaten there, I think, in the quarter final or something. So the tables were turned there. So I suppose, we worked very hard during that period. We played a lot of games. I said, we got a good few training sessions. But I again, Kieran, with the rural, with sort of the pick we have and everything else, we were very fortunate at the time. My brother Oliver was in charge of the intermediate teams, managing the intermediate team in Castletown with Seamus Harrington and a few more guys, and they were very kind to us in the sense that, they released players to us on the Wednesday night or whatever. We tried to train on a Wednesday night or play a game on the Wednesday night, and they were playing the weekend. We often played on a Saturday and Sunday. And so we got a lot of games into people during that period, and they were very cooperative. And again, with the Adrigal management, the same ththing, like, and the rest of the clubs bought into it big time. And I suppose, like, when you win a few games and you had a good year in '96, like, then they sort of, you get the cooperation of all the rest of the clubs. And like, we had good liaison as well. Like, we had, Barry look after all the teams in the liaison in Cork and that sort of thing. And, I suppose, like, players wanted to play. I suppose that's the bottom line, like,
And that was huge too, like you said, players wanted to play, and they could see they were part of a winning team. Like the progression from the quarter-final '95, semi-final '96 into the county final '97, and it was the first time, I think, since '67 that Beara were back in the county senior football final. And it was just a little matter of Castlehaven and Larry Tompkins and Cahalan standing in your way. Like, let's go to that drawn game first. I think it was 10 points apiece. Larry Tompkins had a late free to win that game, if memory serves me right. I was going through your mind.
You're 100% right. I was down on the left-hand side of the stand side, and I was about 30 yards out from the goals. And I said to him, Larry, if you ever miss one now, in my own mind, to be beaten by a point at that stage of the game, I think it was into injury time, it would have been chronic. Like, but against that, like, I can tell afterwards, like, a few secrets. But we were 25-1 the start of the year in that year, like, and I was saying to myself, like, I mean, realistically, like, we weren't that far away, like, and so I think there's a few boys very happy at the end of that year, anyway, collecting a few quid here and there. But anyway, Castlehaven were always going to be, I think, the team to beat during that period, because they had ferocious battles with Skib, a few years earlier, and they had a very good side. Like, I think they had about 7 or 8, 9 maybe on the Cork senior panel at the time. You had the Callans, definitely. You had the Collinses. You had the Crowleys. You had David Burke. You had Michael Maguire was in goals. They were all Cork minors, under 21 seniors. There was about 10 or 11 of them, and of course Larry Tompkins being a huge addition to any side at the time. And he was a driving force, obviously, for Castlehaven. I'm not saying he was the fulcrum of the team or anything like that, but he was definitely a big driving force during that period, like, for them. And like, to contain it, like, we had to play, if you like, a little bit of a negative game in one sense, because we had to make sure we got our lineups and our marking. John Cleary was on top of the game. I was talking about the two Clearys as well. John, the current Cork manager, and Dennis was full back. They were exceptional players, like, and so our matchups had to be, we had to play without fear as well, because, as you said, we had, I think there was seven under 21s, definitely 7, if not more, and our panel consists of another 5 or 6. Like, so we had a very young side, really, except for 1 to 2 or 3 players. So from that perspective, like, you couldn't go into Castlehaven, like, and fear them, if you want, for want of a better word. Like, if you did, you were gone beforehand. But I do remember we played Nemo Rangers in a challenge game out in Carrigadrohid, and Billy Morgan was in charge at the time, and he brought a full side out. Now, he was also involved with Cork, if memory serves me right, during that period. I had a lot of Cork players on anyway, but he brought a full side out to place in Clondrohid, I think. Carrigadrohid, Clondrohid, 1-2 anyway. Clondrohid, I think. And we had a rattling game against them, and I think we might have pipped them by a point. And I knew then that like, we had the capability of contesting, which was the main thing, really. Like, I didn't think that we were going to be. I never thought we were going to be annihilated, but you could never tell against Castlehaven, because they're a side that, mentally they can dominate you, and they're a super footballing side. And we got many toasting from them over the years, I can tell you.
But you turned the tables on them. You turned the tables on them a couple of weeks later, because in that final replay, it was a very tight game, and I think it was 7 points apiece going into the final quarter. Colin Crowley, I think, got the goal, put Haven up, and then, like, Beara heads didn't dip, Donal. Like, instead, like, that last quarter, go down as the stuff of legend. Beara roared back into the game. Eventually won again. What was the final score? There was a 13-1. I was there somewhere now.
We better figure it out, and I would make Kieran, because I've forgotten at this stage how late it was. We won
110 to 1-7. 110 to 1-7. Like,
yeah, I think that Kieran kicked a great point after that from about 55 yards out. The ground was very, very stodgy at the time. And actually, if you, I looked at the replay there, not too often, but once anyway, definitely. And I saw it was sort of a missed hit by Michael Harrington. That was going for the point, I say. He says, no, it was a pass, but it ballooned up into the air. And Seamus Spencer read it and took it on his left. Like, and you'll never sort of beat. Too often you'll beat Michael Maguire on his stronger side, and he hit it off his left and he buried it, like, you know, which gave us obviously great confidence as well, because if you think about it, well, we'd always have the opinion that playing towards the city end is a harder goal to score than playing into the Blackrock end, you know. But look, as I said to you, plays a huge part in games, and you can be lucky. And I felt we were, you know, we had that little bit of luck on that day. The ball bobbed around the square in the end there a few times, and Padraig Crowley had been taken off at that stage because he did his cruciate. And with a young goalkeeper from Adrigol called Timmy O'Shea, who was involved with Adrigol, no, at the moment was selected actually, and he had come on, like, you know, so there was a small bit of mild panic, I'd say, for a while there around the square. But look, I suppose it meant a lot at the time, you know, to get over the line finally, like, you know. You see, it's no different, you know. And I look back at it 25 years ago, like we've had a huge battle here, like with rural depopulation. I was at the Adrigol game on Saturday in Enniskeane, like, and great credit due to them, like, they're fabulous club, like, with 20 players, you know, of a pick, like, and they're in the quarter final now. I think it's against Bursary, and it was no different that time, or for Orden, or for, you know, Garnish or anybody else. Like, amalgamations, I suppose, are part of the future of rural Ireland. Castletownbere, again, you know, if you think back 50, 60 years ago, they were only reformed, and like they were obscener in the 80s, the late 80s. Actually, I was just after coming into the start of the management of the club at that time, and I had my owner's duty after a year senior was taking them down to intermediate level. Now we got to a county final in 1990. But again, it's about continuity and getting, you know, people to stay interested really, like, in the club. And I think they have that structure there now, like, and you know, and as I'm sure it's the same in Kerry or Clare or wherever in rural Ireland. Like, you have a lot of you know, difficult situations to contend with. I suppose the travelling is a big thing, and I suppose, you know, down here we depend an awful lot, like, on the students coming back at the weekends and stuff like that. Like, you know, I'm sure it's no different in a lot of places. I'm not looking for sympathy for that, like, but there isn't a lot of industry in Castletownbere that would, you know, lend to, we say, third level guys being kept locally. If you want, you know, from out of Belvoir, the best we can hope for is they stay in Cork or maybe Limerick or Kerry or somewhere like that. When, you know, things have changed radically, I suppose, in the last few years with COVID and everything else, that nowadays that you can, you know, a lot of people can work from home and they have that a little bit of advantage. But going into the future, I think that I'd possibly say that you'll have a lot of amalgamations, you know, with, especially at the underage level, to make up the numbers. I think I was talking to somebody recently here in Castletownbere, and they said there was 12 people entered the national school in Castletownbere this year. So that just gives you an idea what you're up against now.
Down the road, exactly.
Yeah, Kieran. Like, so, I mean, you know, you have but I suppose, look, if you go back long enough, and you had people who contended with this all their lives, like, you know, after the war and all those periods, you know, and they faced greater difficulties, like, you know, and they didn't have communications, they didn't have transportation or anything like that. Like, so from that perspective, I think these are sort of things, there are challenges there, definitely, but it's how you, I suppose, administrate those challenges and overcome them really at the end of the day. You know, I feel strongly like that, though, that, you know, to connect all the way through from, we'll say, the schools levels in Cork, and especially in Cork, like we'll say from the national schools, the secondary schools, are being underutilized. Now, it takes a lot of resources, and I know that, like, you know, are being underutilized, like, because we need a stronger connecting the GAA to get involved in this, especially the secondary schools. And I know that's very easily said, it's not a flippant trope there, like, but like, there could be an increased level of competition as well within the county, in my own view. This is just my personal view, that you could create the city like an north side, be south side in the community schools and so forth like that. Like you could compare the West Cork versus North Cork in a lot of by amalgamating a lot of players in the different community schools at different levels, like and make an interesting competition, like to increase awareness and get more people involved, because
100%.
not everyone makes the county development squad, and not everyone matures at the same age, and development can come at a later stage, and you get fellas interested playing at that level that might continue on and play a lot more. Now it's easy, I suppose, in Dublin, like if you have resources to go out to the schools, but you've been playing schools in say, I'd have experience of talking to teachers in Ballincollig, like in the community school there, 1,000 pupils, maybe 1,400 in Colum. There's another secondary school way up there. Spread Nave, all these places, traditionally were sort of looked after by the clubs locally. Nemo does, but I wonder are the rest of the clubs being serviced in the same way? Like are the rest of the schools I'm talking about being serviced in the same way? And I feel we should be reaping a bigger dividend of players from those schools.
That's a very good point, Donal. I know now time is going to start running out in this year. I can see the timers ticking, because one of the reasons I wanted to chat to you today, obviously reminisce about the 1997 Beara team, that glorious year. Beara were crowned county champions, and one of the men involved in that was Padraig Crowley, the goalkeeper, and you mentioned him there a couple of times. And there's a fundraiser going on at the moment in Beara, and it's a very important fundraiser for Padraig Crowley, and I think the educational needs of his kids. And I know there's a raffle the October bank holiday weekend in Beara, and as well as that, there's a golf classic that will be in Bearhaven Golf Club on September 15th to 17th, and I'll give some of those details after our chat. But you fill us in on the fundraiser for Padraig Crowley and why people should support this and get involved.
First of all, foremost, he's a GA person, has been all his life. Played with Castdown underage, played with Beara underage, played all the way up along 14, 16 minor, under 21, and actually was on the Cork Junior panel for a while as well. Definitely in Killarney, and talked out he didn't start there. I think Mr. Mackey from Youghal kept him off the team that day. But anyway, he's unfortunately there about a year ago, or said 220, the middle of 220, he got a tumor, and his diagnosis was okay originally, and he got the operation, and everything seemed to be going well for him. But unfortunately, after maybe a period of time, it reappeared. So his second operation, he's married to Gemma, has 2 young kids, 8 and 4, James 8 and Molly 4. He lives down in Glanmire now, and in fact, he had a very good, successful sports day for them yesterday, and I think they raised something like 3,500 for which was a fantastic achievement for the sports day for the children. So I suppose, like, from our perspective, he was always involved. Like, he was with Castletown for 10 years intermediate. He was with Beara for maybe the same in goals, and went out of his way to start to become a very good keeper, trained by a local guy here called Michael Harrington, who did specialised training with him at the age of 15 or 16 as a keeper. And so he's all been part of the fabric of this of Beara GAA, or Castletown Beara GAA, and when this nose broke, like I felt like that as a community we should do something to help. And it says, you're helpless in one sense, and then from our perspective, like, we felt that we should, the only way, if we made a financial contribution towards the education of his children. Now, while his prognosis mightn't be the best, like, DV, like, at the moment, his treatment is ongoing. Mm-hmm. He's getting very extensive chemo at the moment, and hopefully, like, it will have an impact. It has already, in one sense, that has freed up, and he's mobile and things again, which he wasn't for a period of time. So, look, he's going through his own personal battle, and it's only a small contribution that we're making at the end of the day. So we're having a golf classic in the 15, 16, 17, and the response has been magnificent from all the clubs around the county. And even yesterday, after the game, donated money to the fund as well. And lots of people have come up, like Bishopstown GA Club. I could mention loads and loads. I'd be out of order, really, because every club has nearly contributed at this stage, or is going to. So the golf classic is on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And people have said to me that we should have put it on for a lot more in terms we didn't want that. Like, we didn't want to be making it into a sort of, a real sort of, we wanted the people to come out to express their community spirit, and that's why we priced it at that level, because the tickets, people can buy as many tickets as they want to, and they're on freely available. There's a draw on that, Kieran. Like, so from that perspective, like, they're only paying 20 quid a head to play the golf. Each person in their team is 60 quid for the team, and there's lots of good prizes. People are sponsoring tee boxes, they're sponsoring greens, but they can also buy bucket tickets into there, buy a ticket, for 10 quid or the month 50. We didn't want to put the onus on anyone to say, oh, look, to put a team into this, we need 300 quid. We didn't want to put that, because economically at the moment, we understand people are struggling with this, and there's a lot of emphasis. Well, people, 20 quid is affordable for a lot of people. We don't want to impact either on their own. We'd say the GAs, each club is at the moment is always having difficulty raising funds. So we didn't want to impact on that either. And look, Padraig himself and his family understood this, and they didn't want us to go down the route of the GoFundMe page either. So we wanted to get, so this way, like, we're impacting a lot of people, because we know it'll be somebody's turn, unfortunately, next month or a month after. And we just, like, as a group from the 97 group, since it's just falling into the 25-year anniversary thing, that we said, look, what will we do? We'll do a golf classic, and we'll sell the tickets, and hopefully we'll raise enough funding to take care of their education, And I think it also makes people feel they're contributing from the wider GA diaspora as well, like, which is helpful.
It's a really brilliant initiative, and like I said, I'm going to give the details of that after our chat here, Donal. Like I said, time is just about to run out, and so I just want to thank you so much for being so kind with your time and for reminiscing. I think we might have to have a part 2 quite soon, because I want to ask you about what Ollie Roux called a warm weather training camp in Spain. I think it was the team the team holiday. So we might have to organise
that might be better, Kieran. No, after 6 o'clock or the watershed, whatever. After that watershed time at night, like, whatever they say on the BBC, is after 8 o'clock or after 6 o'clock. But yeah, that was an interesting one, and I would say that would warrant a few people's conversation. All right, because we had some good crack, and we enjoyed it, like, because we knew we couldn't get out in the county in the All Ireland series, like, so. I suppose we certainly celebrated well anyway. We made a few bob, and we did things. I suppose we did things out of the ordinary. That definitely deserves a conversation. But one thing I would mention,
around the time, and then hopefully the 1917 will be honoured at this year's county final. I might try and round up some of the characters from that 1917, and we might have one more blast at this. Okay.
All right, Kieran, you're a gentleman.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with Access Credit Union and the Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary. The Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary has been established to honour the career and achievements of Access Credit Union's late CEO, Donal O'Driscoll. Throughout his long term as CEO, Donal championed the credit union ethos of supporting and empowering members, particularly in the sphere of education. In recognition of this, the Donal O'Driscoll Bursary will provide financial support to one individual embarking on third-level education or commencing an apprenticeship in 2022. The recipient of the bursary will be awarded €5,000 to help with costs. To apply for the bursary, visit www.accesscu.ie/bursary.
Kieran, you've been speaking to the new Enniskeane Camogie captain ahead of their championship campaign. How is Ashton keeping?
Ashton's keeping well. We had Ashton on the podcast last year when she was vice captain of the Enniskeane team, but now she's been promoted to captain. So they're 3 games deep into their senior campaign. They've lost their first 2, but the good news is they won their last game. They hockeyed Ballincollig by 321 to 4 points. So that means that they still have a fighting chance to advance even from the group stages. Their final group game is against Éire Óg in Clodagh on Monday, September 19th. Huge game for Ashton, huge game for Enniskeane. But the good news is Enniskeane are going in off the back of a really, really good win against Ballincollig. So when I caught up with Aisling a little bit earlier, I asked her first, how come she's now captain and how much is she enjoying that role? The Cork Senior Camogie Championship is quite busy at the moment. The games are coming thick and fast, and we're delighted now to be joined by Enniskeane captain Ashton O'Driscoll to talk about the campaign to date. First off, welcome back to the podcast, Ashton. the last time I was chatting to you, you were vice captain of Enniskeane, but now you are the captain. So talk to me, how did that come about?
I suppose it came about at the start of the year when we were looking at, I suppose, getting somebody to come manage us. So it started off with that, and I was one of the people that was roped in to get on the committee and I suppose be part of what the players kind of are looking for in a management selection. I came on top of that then when we found our manager, which was our trusty Elaine Aylward. I suppose we were at our first match and Elaine just announced me as captain. I think it's just, I've always been there and it was a great honour and privilege obviously to be given the role of captain, and that's the way I'm looking at it really. So yeah, it was great for Elaine to ask me to do it. I suppose I've always been there. I've been there the last couple of years. I would probably be noted as one of maybe the leaders on the team as well. I'm always talking. I don't know if that's the teacher in me, but I'm always talking on the pitch as well. So yeah, it's a great honour and privilege to go out there and be one of the leaders amongst the many other leaders that are on the team as well. So it's a bit of a shock to me first, I would say.
But no doubt you're growing into the role as vice captain last year and captain this year. But you mentioned there Elaine Aylward as the Enniskeane manager this year, and obviously Elaine, if our podcast listeners don't realise, she's the Kilkenny Camogie All-Star. That was back in 2009, I think it was. But she's Camogie royalty. Like was a brilliant Camogie player, and now she's been living in Enniskeane for the last couple of years. And she was involved too in Enniskeane, won the intermediate back in 2020, part of the management team. But she is the manager this year. So what's it like having someone like Elaine Aylward as a manager, to learn from her, Aisling?
It's unbelievable. Like, as you said, like Elaine has been with us now for 3-4 years. Like she was there from intermediate up, and she's built such a good relationship with all of us, everyone, and like we all respect Elaine. And like, as you said, like she is so knowledgeable there, and every piece of information that she gives, like we literally just take it all on board. You know, like we're so blessed to have her knowledge, her wisdom and the experience that she has playing at senior level with her club, but also then senior level with Kilkenny as well. It's unbelievable, and like what she has to give and offer, it's just, we're so blessed, I suppose, to have her on board. So it's unreal that she's there and that we're getting the benefit from it as well. You know, I think when Elaine speaks, like everybody listens, and it's going back to that relationship. Like she knows all the girls, and like she's probably in the best position now at the moment, you know, with regards where to play girls and things like that, and what works for us and things like that. So it's unbelievable that she's there and that she's taken on this role, and we're so thankful that she has taken on the role as well, you know. So it's good, it's very good.
Let's have a chat about the Camogie Championship so far, the senior campaign. This year, it's a group stage format. I mean, we're seeing that across women's and men's G at the moment, to kind of the introduction of these group stages. So from a player's point of view, it's guaranteed games, and you know when games are on. So I presume it's a lot more preferable than the old school knockout.
Oh, definitely. Like even last year, so I think I was speaking to you after the Douglas match, and then we were going into our Enniskeane match, and then like we lost against Enniskeane, so like we only had one championship game at senior level, two, sorry, like we won one and then we lost the second one. So like we'd only 2 matches, whether this year now there is 5 in our group, and like we're guaranteed 4 matches and a bye. So like it's unbelievable, like you're playing 4 really good standard matches at senior level, and you're gaining experience in every one of those matches. Like you're learning from your mistakes, and you can bring that to the next match, you know, and be it even next year or whatever. So it's way preferable. Like you're playing more camogie at a competitive level, and that's what you want to do. You know, it's grand playing, you know, your challenge matches and everything like that. Like you learn loads from them, you can try out new things, but it's at that competitive championship level. That's what we want to be playing, and that's where we are now. And it's great that we are guaranteed 4 matches at least, if people don't progress or if teams don't progress. So it's very good. It's way more preferable. Yeah.
I mentioned there earlier, obviously, that Enniskeane won the intermediate back in 2020. So last season was your first year up at senior, and it was all new to Enniskeane, the first time in the senior Camogie Championship, a brand new adventure. But now this is your second season, so you're probably starting to find your feet. So do you find actually that your goals are even changing? Like you want to push on now, like you want to make an impact at senior level?
Yeah, definitely. Like last year, we were finding our feet, and we started off well, etc. But it was still all a learning curve and everything like that. And this year, the goals have changed. Like we want to get out of our group stage now. Like we want to do well. We want to make our mark, and this is the time that we do it in the group stages. I suppose our first 2 matches, we didn't get the results that we wanted. I suppose with injuries and there was just various, college and people working and, getting girls back in with holidays and stuff like that. So I suppose our first 2 games weren't the results we wanted. But now with their Ballincollig match, we made our mark, and that's what we want, and that's what Enniskeane Camogie is about. So hopefully now we'll go on and do that in our last group game as well. But definitely, we want to make our mark, and we want people, I suppose, to know that Enniskeane are a senior Camogie team as well, and get up there and get recognised for that.
You mentioned the first 2 games, they were losses to St. Finbarr's and St. Catherine's, but we're going to put them to one side. I want to talk about the positive. It was a 3-21-0-4 win against Ballincollig. That's a right good win. So talk to me about that performance and the positives that you can take from that into the next game against Éire Óg.
Yeah, definitely. That was the match that we needed as well, to boost confidence as well. We learned from our first 2 matches. We had made, I suppose, so many mistakes as well as positives, and we took those in. And we, I suppose, regrouped as a team, and that was hard after 2 losses, and we needed to boost morale again, and get together as a team, and we did that, and that's what Enniskeane Camogie, that's what we can do. And I suppose we worked on that. We had girls come back from injury, like Danielle Carroll came back, which was a great asset as well after being sick for a while, and there was various other people back as well, so it's brilliant that we can do that. They're the performances that we can do, but now we need to build on that as well for 2 weeks time when we go out and play Éire Óg, because we need another big win as well, and no doubt that once we play to that capability that we are, and we have belief in ourselves as well, and take on those positives as well as the negatives, we have no doubt that we will do that as well. But a very good win, one that was well needed.
Talk to me so about the permutations of this Éire Óg game. That's your last group game, so you've 1 win and 2 defeats. What needs to happen in that final game?
So we need to win it to get into 3rd place, depending on the other matches. I think St. Finbar's have won all their matches. Catherine's have 1 more match as well. So it'll be 2nd place, but I would imagine maybe Catherine's are probably more likely to take 2nd place, but we'll be on for 3rd then if we win that match. And then out of the other 3 groups then, without the divisions teams, because only one of them go through, so the other 3 groups then it'll be the best 3rd that goes through. And I think, I stand corrected, I think it's on scoring difference. So we need a good performance now against Éire Óg, We'll be fighting.
Do you know when that game is on and where yet?
It's on Monday the 18th at 7:30 in Clidove under lights, I think, So we have another week and about 2 weeks of preparation.
So since that's on a school night, I presume that students will get homework off that night, will they? Because you'll be so...
I'll give them loads of homework so that they'll be late anyway. They'll be well tired anyway from the day, definitely.
Even just chatting, let's say, about this Enniskeane team for a second. Of course, we all know about Orla Cohen, and she's done such great things over the years. But talk to me about some of the younger players that are coming through now that are making their mark. The likes of Dara O'Brien, she got 2 goals against Ballincollig. There's such an influx of good young players in this Enniskeane team.
Yeah, and I suppose that's another factor as well, that we're finding our feet now in senior level, we have so many young girls coming up, and they're 16. I think we have 16-year-olds playing with us, and that's pushing us all on in training. They're flying fit, they've all the hurling done, they're playing all these competitions coming up, they've under 16, they've minor, and they've probably played in our junior team as well, this year until they got their debut at senior, and that's unbelievable because they're getting all this experience as well, and they're only 16 years of age, they probably at least another 10 years at senior, so it's all so good for the club, and we've huge potential. It's just to bring that out in us now and gel as a group, and to get everybody back playing, at the standard and giving us those wins that we want at Ballincollig. But the influx of players that we have, it's brilliant, and I think it's credit to what's happening at the underage level as well. There's so many people getting involved in Enniskeane Camogie, and that's what you want, because you want the girls coming up, because there's only so much that all of, we'll say, the older people can do, there's only a few more years left in us, so we want to bring those in as well. And also to get us out, to get more out of the older people, you need that competition coming in. I think even Molly Hill came on and she scored, I think it was 1-1, or she definitely got a goal anyway. Dara scored 2 goals, Sinead Hurley was flying it. Emer, now Dara's sister, unfortunately she has suffered concussion, so she's been missing all our matches, but they're all the talent that we have, we've Emma O'Driscoll in the back line, they're all growing into those roles as well, and that's what you want as well, so it's brilliant. It's a good outlook for the club as well, definitely.
Onward and upward for Enniskeane. Best of luck against Éire Óg on Monday week, Ashton, and thanks for joining us again.
Thanks very much, Kieran. Thank you.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with Access Credit Union and the Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary. The Donal O'Driscoll Student Bursary has been established to honour the career and achievements of Access Credit Union's late CEO, Donal O'Driscoll. Throughout his long term as CEO, Donal championed the credit union ethos of supporting and empowering members, particularly in the sphere of education. In recognition of this, the Donal O'Driscoll Bursary will provide financial support to one individual embarking on third-level education or commencing an apprenticeship in 2022. The recipient of the bursary will be awarded €5,000 to help with costs. To apply for the bursary, visit www.accesscu.ie/bursary.
Okay, Kieran, let's preview this week's Southern Star sports section. And I know you don't know the meaning of the phrase, but try to keep it brief. Time is against us. Unfortunately, that was a dirty dig. You're very good at keeping it brief. But anyway, now I'm dragging on. Now I'm slowing us down. So a brief summation of this week's Southern Star sports section.
Very, very salty, Jack. Very, very salty. Yeah, so it's a packed 28-page sports section. We have 21 pages of GAA, from County Championship, which we talked about earlier, to the West Cork Junior Football Championship, where the 4 quarter-finals were played the weekend, to the Cork Ladies Senior Football Championship, to the Cork Camogie Championship. It really is an action-packed GAA special this week, and there's something for everyone. So it's really worth checking out. Every club is in there. As well as that, I had a catch up with Darragh McElhinney, our Glengarriff athlete, to chat about his recent 5,000 metre final at the European Athletics Championships. As always with Darragh, it's a really good read. He's debriefing his 16th place finish and what he needs to do next to take the next step. But we have to remember that Darragh was in 7th place with 250 metres to go in that European final. So he really is a young man with a really bright future ahead of him. Also, the Castleac won the West Cork League Masters title. We have reaction and a report from that. Bad weekend for Keith Cronin in the British Rally Championship. He crashed out of the lead of the latest event in Wales. But he's still in the hunt for that title. He's in 2nd place now behind Oisin Price, but there's 2 rallies left, so do not rule Keith out just yet. And this week's last word column, I think, is a really, really good column. It's about Paul O'Donovan and why he is in the conversation for Ireland's greatest ever sports person. But it's comparing Paul with another West Cork sporting legend of a different generation, Dano O'Mahony. They're 2 men, two trailblazers from farming backgrounds, you could say. They're both the sons of farmers, but they've both done incredible things for both their sports. So I'm putting forward the argument for why Paul O'Donovan is Ireland's greatest sportsman. So that's well worth checking out. And Jack, for me, that was brief.
Absolutely. Brilliantly concise, Kieran. A true professional. That's all we have time for on this week's Southern Star Sport podcast. Obviously, the Southern Star will be in shops on Thursday, but if you can't make it to the shops, you can always subscribe online to our e-paper. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/e-paper. And just last week, we launched a new app to go along with your e-paper subscription. The app is available in both the App Store and the Google Play Store. So if you're an Android user for the first time ever, you can now download the Southern Star e-paper app. It had been on the App Store before, but it's an improved version available on both platforms now, with archives going back over 10 years at no additional cost. So you can subscribe to read the Southern Star on the go wherever you are in the world for less than €2 per week. And all of what Kieran described in his brief summation there will be available from 6:30 on Thursday morning via our app. We'll be back at the same time next week. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to our producer, Dylan Mangan. Slán Tamil.